Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I will call into open session this meeting of the Arlington Independent School District Board of Trustees for August 18th, beginning at 7:04. I want to thank everyone for coming out and joining us this evening. And we would like to start our meeting with the opening ceremony. And if we could please ask one of our principals of the year, Ms. Dr. Spence, to come forth and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think a round of applause for our principal of the year is in order. Congratulations, Dr. Spence. So if everyone would please take a moment to silence your cell phones and electronic devices to avoid disruptions around you, we'd appreciate that. And if you would join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We're going to make a small change in the order of the agenda in respect to all of the people who are working very busily on the campuses, we know, this evening, and move to the administrative appointments before the CBOC committee. So, Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Sullins, and I'd like to recommend that the board ratify the assistant principal for Cookin, the assistant principal for Lamar, and appoint the principal for Webb Elementary, as discussed in closed session.
I'll move that we accept the administrative appointments.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Hibbs and a second by Ms. Mays. Any discussion? Please vote. Woohoo! All trustees vote in the affirmative. This evening, Dr. Reich is out of the country, and Trustee Hogg is home celebrating the arrival of his baby daughter. So thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Sullins, and I'd like to introduce our new principal for Webb Elementary, Ms. Elena Lopez. Elena attended University of North Texas to receive her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, Texas A&M Commerce for her Master's in Counseling and Guidance. Most recently, the assistant principal at Workman Junior High, has also served as assistant principal at Ferguson Junior High, assistant principal at Crow Elementary, has been a counselor at Turning Point, and a counselor in Irving, and has taught as an elementary school teacher. Elena, congratulations.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board, President Sullins, Dr. Cavazos. Thank you for this humbling honor to serve as principal of Webb Elementary. I begin by thanking God, from whom all good things come. I thank you for your perfect timing for the doors you close and those that you open. To AISD, Dr. Cavazos, Dr. Wirtz, Ms. Wilmoth Sonato, Dr. Hobrick, Dr. Brown, and the directors of the Emerging Leaders Program, thank you for investing in my professional growth. I commit to working as if unto the Lord. To all of the leaders I have had, it has been a privilege to work with you. I'd like to send a special thank you to Ms. Grace Alleman, Mr. Jared Zahn, for opening that secondary door for me. For Ms. Inelda Acosta, thank you for your mentorship, for your leadership, and for your belief in building capacity. To all Workman administrative team and staff, I will truly miss you. We did have a powerhouse, and I know that that will continue in my absence. To Webb family, I am eager to begin our work. Thank you for welcoming me. Lastly, I want to recognize my parents, my in-laws, for their continued love and support. To my husband of 23 years, thank you, Gary, for being my biggest fan and for loving me. I love you. To our children, Gary, Francesca, and Elijah, thank you for understanding when I missed first days of school, meet the teacher nights, sneak a peeks, open houses, and school parties. I love you endlessly. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the assistant principal of Cookin Education Center, Ms. Laura Prendergast. Laura attended University of North Texas to receive her Bachelor of Science in Psychology, George Mason University to obtain her Master of Education in Administration and Supervision. Most recently, an instructional coach, has been an assistant principal, has taught 4th grade, and has been an administrative intern. Laura, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you. President Sullins, board members, Dr. Cavazos, I really appreciate this honor. I want to thank also my principal, Dr. Spence, Principal of the Year, and Mrs. Waller and the Kukin staff. I'm looking forward to working at Kukin and the pre-K campuses. A teacher a long time ago said to me that pre-K programs are the gifts that keep on giving, and over all these years, it is really spot on. So thank you very much.
Last but not least, I'd like to introduce the assistant principal for Lamar High School, Mr. Brandon Howard. Brandon attended McMurray University to obtain his Bachelor of Science and University of Texas at Arlington for his Master in Ed Administration. Most recently, the assistant principal at Carter Junior High School, has served as assistant principal at Key Elementary, has been a teacher coach at Bailey Junior High School, and has taught U.S. history also at Bailey Junior High. So, Brandon, congratulations.
Thank you. President Sullins, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos, thank you very much for this opportunity to serve as assistant principal at Lamar High School. I would also like to thank Mr. Hagman and the interview panel at Lamar High School, as well as Area Superintendent Ms. Wilma Sonato for feeling that I would be a good fit at Lamar High School. I would like to recognize my family that's here tonight. My wife, Margie Howard, and my 3 boys, Preston, who will be a 7th grader at Bailey, and Barrett and Gannon, who will be 5th and 3rd graders at Duff Elementary. I feel like during my time in the school, in the district, I've had the opportunity to work for some tremendous leaders, from Jimmy Walker to Tiffany Benavidez at Bailey, to Tiffany Jackson at Key, to Rennie Lizardo at Carter. They've showed me what it means to run a school where you make decisions that's in the best interest of kids, and that I will take something from each of them with me as I move forward. I would also like to say something to my family at Carter. I feel like we've accomplished some great things in the year and a half that I was there. I look forward to seeing more great things going on there, and I know that with the leadership of Mr. Lizardo that will happen. To my new family at Lamar, I've had the opportunity to work there for a couple days, and from the time I walked in the door, I was treated like I was a member of that family. I look forward to lots of fun times and great things at Lamar, and I'm proud to be a Lamar Viking. Thank you.
As is our custom, we would ask that the appointees follow Mr. Kale to the lobby for a receiving line, so each of us could meet and greet you. And if the audience would please allow the board to go first, we would appreciate that, so that we can take only a brief break and come back to participate in the rest of the agenda this evening. Thank you. Oh, better? Okay.
Thank you, President Sullins. And at this time, I'd like to invite Dan Malone up to give us a report on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
Thank you, President Sullins, Superintendent Cavazos, and distinguished members of the board. As you know, a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee is not required by state law, regulations, Texas Education Association, or anything else as far as I'm concerned. So on behalf of the committee, we want to thank this award-winning board for its wisdom in establishing a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee so that citizens can have input into this process. And you also appointed some great members to this committee. We are going to be presenting our report, but before I do that, I'd like to let you know about the members on our committee. First off, we are an extremely diverse group of Arlington citizens. Occupationally, we include a school teacher, an accountant, an engineer, IT specialist, insurance and real estate agents, several businessmen and businesswomen, community volunteers, and unfortunately, a couple of lawyers. We are diverse in age, from retirees to most recently high school students. We have parents of past and present students, as well as grandparents of, I think, generally past students. And we're also diverse in both race and ethnicity. So we have a few members of the committee here today. If y'all will stand up, David Wilbanks and Suzanne Kelly and John Slover are here. We serve 2-year terms, as you know. They're staggered terms so that no more than half of the committee, or half the committee has experience, half is new. And so really appreciate your service and thank you for being here. We as committee members do our best to represent all of the students and all of the schools in the district to the best of our ability. We usually have an affiliation with one or more schools, but we do our best to represent all schools. You can see we also had alternates here. David Wilbanks, in fact, is one of those alternates. As you know, new this year, I think at the very end of last year perhaps, you added the Student Leadership Advisory Board members. And I just want to let you know that it was tough for most of those members to make it to our meetings. However, we had presidents and SLAB members from two schools, Sam Houston and Seguin, who were very regular attenders. And I wish I had their names. I would have put it on the slide. I wasn't able to get that. And then we've had another meeting just last week with the new SLAB members, and we had presidents from Arlington High and Martin attending. So I think it's a good, they have not been participating in terms of questions, but I think it's a great experience for them to see democracy in action. So I applaud you for that as well. For those who may be going, I know you made the charge, so let me just go real quickly through the purpose, high level. You know you've given us a charge. Here's the main points of the charge. And this is thanks to David Wilbanks, by the way, who's chaired this committee, and I'm still using his slides from several years ago probably. So CBOC was established by the Board of Trustees to provide transparency and enhance public confidence, provide findings and recommendations to the board, which we have for you, to monitor progress of the bond program, and all of these are with the goal of finding ways that the district can maximize the bond's potential. We want the taxpayers to receive the most value possible. That's why we're here. So real quick, I'm going to go real high level on our meetings so we can get to the findings and recommendations. But as you know, we meet once a quarter. We've actually met 6 times since we last presented to the board. 4 of those meetings were with staff present, and then 2 of those meetings were just the CBOC itself discussing our findings and recommendations. And Cindy Powell did attend that meeting as well on my invitation, just for her wealth of experience and guidance for the committee in that process. At each meeting, we had each of the components of the bond program or the people in charge of those components present to us. So here are those people listed, and at every single meeting, these folks gave us reports on their areas. And then also, we've now been going at it 2 years. We have things that come up that we want our own information. And so here's 3 areas: the construction fund summary report, facility schedule, and the hub participation report that we have specifically asked or tweaked to the committee's desires. And let me just say that Cindy, her staff, and all the ones that are meeting with CBOC really go out of their way to provide us. Quite frankly, this last meeting, we got a report. I had even forgotten that CBOC had asked for that report, and here it was presented to us. So they're really being responsive. And we receiving not only written materials, but an oral presentation at each of the meetings. So that's at every meeting. High level, here's our agendas. I won't read through this, but in addition to the 5 staff presentations and those 3 reports, we also have specific items that we discussed. So here's what we did at our August 10th meeting. You can see that. That was the last meeting of the previous year's CBOC. We had new member orientation on October 19th of last year. Cindy Powell conducts this orientation, and of course she brings her wealth of knowledge to the district, and mainly lets all these new members understand all the acronyms that we throw around so they won't be completely lost during the meetings. That was a joke, you guys. November 10th meeting was at Diane Patrick Elementary. We got a great presentation from Danielle Reynolds on the STEM lab there. You can see, I've just kind of high level wanted you to know what we're doing in our meetings. January 19th was our first time to meet at one of the construction sites other than the STEM lab, and Kelly Horn and Javier Fernandez were our tour guides for the work going on at Workman. And April 20th, we were at Corey, and Dr. Matt Varnell, the principal there, did a wonderful job showing off the Corey Academy of Fine Arts and Dual Languages. Whoops, I skipped over, sorry. I skipped way forward. Okay, how do I get back? Shift tab?
Just hit the back arrow.
Back arrow? Ah, good. Oh, I really skipped forward, okay. Good. And we also got a demonstration of the piano lab there from 2 of the teachers at Corey, Tina Phelps and Tabitha Gordon. So, high level, that's what we did at our meetings. What I mainly wanted to have some time to go over with you is the findings and the recommendations. And just so you know, the committee is doing its best job to get the information in, ask the questions that we feel like we need to get into the depth and really the full understanding to the best of our ability. So after these 4 meetings that I just showed you, we had meetings in May and June of this year to discuss potential recommendations to make to you and findings. So I've got 4 findings and 4 recommendations and 2 findings. All of those passed by unanimous vote of the members present and voting. Not all members were able to attend those meetings. So recommendation 1 concerns best practices of a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And let me start out by saying, please don't take this as a criticism, because frankly, when I looked at our charge and I looked at best practices, documents that are available on the internet across the United States, we have many, if not most of those. However, this is a district that doesn't want to just be good, it wants to be excellent. And just as in your last meeting, you revise your board policies annually, we think it's a good idea for the board as a whole to look at best practices of CBOC and see if there's not something there. I think it was 7 years ago this charge was originally developed. And we think there may be other things that after 7 years of experience of going through bond projects, you may want to look at. So that's where this recommendation comes out of. And quite frankly, if you go on the internet and do a Google search of Citizens Bond Oversight Committee best practices, the CalBOC document that's mentioned here, that's an acronym for California League of Bond Oversight Committees. And this is a league that was formed in California to assist Citizens Bond Oversight Committees in their jobs. You'll see in that document, if you go there, there's 3 sections. The first section you're going to realize is California law. So you can probably just skip through that one, right, John? It's California. But no, actually, there are some things that you may want to consider. Obviously, those won't apply in Texas. But there may be some things that you say, hey, that's not a bad idea. Wonder how we could incorporate that here. But the one I really want to focus your attention to is Section 2, which is labeled Best Practices. And as you go through there, you're going to say, wow, we're already doing most of this, because frankly we are. But there are some things, particularly in the audit area, I would say, both financial and performance audits, that I think it'd be good for the board to have a discussion, whether those are good, whether for this bond or maybe a future one. So we recommend that document to you to just look at best practices. You may want to ask for some prior CBOC involvement in that if you want to think about that. So that's recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 is a dashboard reporting tool. I frankly didn't realize that this is, I think it's maybe item number 42 on the best practices on that CalBOC document is a dashboard reporting tool. I think Tony Pompa made this recommendation. Whether he got that from there, I don't know. But as you found out from Cindy Powell's presentation at the last meeting, they're already doing this. And Ryan Pierce has taken that suggestion after we made this recommendation. You will find that the August, if you go on the bond page, the August dashboard reporting tool is already on the website. And what we want to do is just condense down into one page, easy to read, where are we on each of the 4 different areas. So, and I'm certainly going to be ready for questions, and if you have questions as we go, I'm happy to take them as we go too. So recommendation 3, I mentioned earlier that the committee requested and receives a hub report at each meeting. So we've been tracking the hub participation rates at every single meeting that we have. So this 3rd recommendation grows out of our review of that process. As you know, the board has not really tracked this before. So I have several things to kind of add to this. Number 1 is we applaud this district for actually tracking hub participation, not just setting a goal. And we certainly recognize, especially as an initial step in this process, if you don't know where you are and you aren't really holding contractors accountable to what they pledged, you don't have anything to go on. So I applaud the district, the whole, and the staff for tracking, number 1. Number 2, I just point out that you'll note that we added hub as well as MWBE. And those are 2 different certification programs. I don't claim to be an expert. They do cover slightly different things. I think the MWBE covers disabled veterans and small disadvantaged businesses, I believe is the other one. That's a federally defined term. So the committee was in agreement that we want to add those. I think the district may already be doing that, but I want to make that clear. Number 3, we actually had several members that brought hub recommendations. So this recommendation 3 is a consolidation of at least 3, as I recall. It may have been 4. And those had differing percentages. My recollection is there was 25 and there was 26%, maybe 2 25s and 1 26. So you'll see that we kind of agreed on language that says at least 25% participation. That was just a compromise between those 2. But I just wanted you to know we were talking in the range of 25 to 26% when we had that discussion. And now I can see if I can figure out how to use this. I can't. The other is, you'll note that this is dollars spent on the construction portion of the bond, not the other areas. That's our goal, is to meet this participation level in the construction area of the bond. Recommendation number 4 focuses on another component of the contractors, which the committee wants to assure receive adequate communication and encouragement to bid on projects. We have phrased this as local and Tarrant County contracts. We did not have an extensive discussion on those 2 terms, local and Tarrant County. I think the intent of the committee is that we would like to track Arlington businesses and then immediately surrounding areas that, would be the Metroplex, maybe a 30-mile radius, something like that. We didn't intend to exclude Dallas County. We didn't have any discussion about that. But I think that would be appropriate to enlarge that. Maybe Tarrant County was a little too restrictive in that wording. But the idea is we want to do as much as possible to get Arlington businesses bidding on this project, keeping the dollars in Arlington, making the project small enough so that Arlington contractors can bid. I know you're working on this too. We're just kind of repeating stuff that you've heard. But, really the intent is to emphasize and encourage and entice and any other E-letter word you can think of to get Arlington businesses to bid on these projects. And the more bidders we have, the better prices the taxpayers get. And that's what our goal is, to keep these dollars here. That's our recommendation number 4. Finding number 1, this finding addresses the communication efforts of the district. And frankly, we just want to say a big thanks to Leslie Johnston and her staff, and particularly Ryan Pierce. As you know, Ryan is our communications specialist, and he has really gone above and beyond to be responsive to the CBOC. These dashboard tools is his area, and we're doing a good job. We think we're a model district, but we want to do an even better job, and that's what the committee's. We want to applaud the efforts. We also want to say, keep on doing it and do even more. We can't communicate enough, is the intent of this finding. I'm not reading these because I'm assuming you have these and you can read. And then finding number 2, this is really a conclusory statement of the committee members who are completing their 2-year terms, who've really had the most experience on the committee. That includes me, and I'm wrapping up my term here as well. But the work of the staff, and I've mentioned, and that's from Cindy to Kelly and Bob before him, and Javier and Chad, Jeremy, Tim, James is here. It's simply exemplary. And we do need to continue to monitor the spending on the projects. And I know Cindy presented to you last week that we're over budget. I think it's $12.9 million. We as a committee have looked at, we think the contingency that's there is adequate, but it's something that, just like Cindy wants to do and the staff wants to do, we think that's something that continues or bears monitoring into the future, make sure that those overages don't continue. So that's the continuing monitoring slide. So that's the CBOC report. What questions do you have for us?
Thank you very much, Mr. Malone. It's always good to have you guys here, and what a tremendous amount of work that your committee does. And we have tremendous appreciation for the number of hours that you put into this to this process. I know that there are board members with questions this evening. We'll start with Ms. Mays.
Good.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you for chairing. Thank you for the members that participated. We understand the amount of time that it takes, and we really do appreciate your interest in wanting to help the district move further and for taking your time. Thank you very much for that. I also appreciate the fact of taking the time to make recommendations of things that y'all found of interest, because at the end of the day, the whole point of allowing y'all to see the information and review it is to say, hey, here's some things we've seen, and here's our recommendations that we make. So I also appreciate that. If you came back and said, hey, everything looked good in what they said, if that's the case, that's fine. But to know that you're actually paying enough attention to come up with a recommendation that you think would be better for the district, truly do appreciate that. That means that you took your position seriously, and we appreciate that. MWBE stands for Minority and Women-Owned Businesses. Appreciate you including that term along with the hub participation. Also, it is a conversation that's been had and increasingly had over the few years of having bond, which means that there's lots of money to go around. So once again, I appreciate that recommendation and appreciate the research that was done for us to go back and follow. I can say kudos to the district for, first of all, creating a bond oversight committee before any real public issues have happened, as in some other states. A lot of times it comes out of issues that have happened, fraudulently, misuse of money. So I applaud our district for having the foresight to say, let's create this committee before anything like that happens, which of course we know it won't because of our great financial group here. But just really appreciate the foresight. Yeah, Tony heard me. The foresight of the district to say, hey, we want full transparency so that we have that trust with the community and their dollars, because at the end of the day, it's our community's dollars and our dollars. So really, I don't have any questions. I just wanted the ability to be able to say that because I realize what an effort is made to sit on this committee, and really, from the questions that have been had from individuals on this committee, I know that a lot of interest and research was taken to make sure that the information provided to us was something that we can actually take and discuss. So thank you.
This committee was not afraid to ask questions and ask any questions. And the staff is incredibly responsible at getting us answers.
That's great. Mr. Hibbs?
I'd like to echo my colleagues' statements. It's pretty rare that you've got 4 individuals that sit on this board today that were involved beginning with the 2009 bond at the early conceptual format. Ms. Walton, Ms. Mays, Ms. Sullins, and myself all were part of being able to be on the advisory committee to bring forward the 2009 bond. And at that time, when we were going forward to take it from the recommendation to the board of that time, to us all agreeing that we would be behind that bond and move it to the public sector, we said we wanted to have a citizens bond oversight committee to be in place and do exactly what has been so successfully accomplished over the past 7.5 years. And I know that my colleague, Ms. Mays, once chaired this committee prior to getting on the board, and then we've just had a series of great chairmen leading all the way up to you, Dan.
Other than me.
And we're really going to be missing that leadership. I mean, it has been tremendous. I mean, I look at the individuals that are in the audience with us tonight, as well as the entirety of the rest of your committee, and you've done just exceptional work. And you've taken as hard of questions that you've asked, you've also had to take. And I will share with you that Mr. Malone and myself have had several conversations, and I ask hard questions back, and the beauty of it is because we want to know what the ultimate intent is by the committee, because you do look at something that we may just completely overlooked because, you know, we're being inundated with a lot of information. You're able to decipher some of the very things that we have seen. And I know that in our time that Ms. Hudson and I have been able to serve on this committee along with our chairman, Dr. Reich, we've had long, detailed, in-depth discussions after the ones that you've have even been able to have with us. So from that standpoint, I can tell you that we want to let you know that we welcome this insight. Doesn't necessarily mean that we'll adopt everything, but we welcome your insight. And I think that what you bring to us challenges us, and that's what this committee needs to do for this board. But even more, you are our face to the community, and people we can refer back to and say these strong individuals that have been able to see the data can attest that this district is intending to do everything that we've laid out. So, once again, I can't heap upon enough praise to your committee and thanks, because you're not paid. You don't, sometimes you do this with people looking at you and saying, why in the world would you ever think about doing that? And it's because it's kind of like the love of the game.
That's what we think about all of you guys.
Yeah. Well, sometimes other people think maybe something different. But again, and I would also defer to Ms. Hudson on behalf of our committee. We can't thank you enough for what you've done. And as hopefully speaking as from a board, you make our work a whole lot easier. So thank you again.
Thank you, John. You know, John, and two, the CBOC is like FFC, Financial Futures Committee, in that we understand that our role has to be to make a recommendation, because we really don't have the full picture, you know, like you guys do. We're doing our best, you know, with our quarterly meetings and gathering information, but we fully understand these are recommendations for your consideration, and you've got a lot of other issues to balance and work out. We fully understand that.
Ms. Hudson?
Hi.
Hi.
I'll be pretty brief. I definitely echo the sentiments of Ms. Mays and Mr. Hibbs. As someone who hasn't previously served on a CBOC, I think I bring a little bit of a newcomer's perspective. And I was absolutely floored by the level of commitment from every person on the committee, as well as the people in our administration who are facilitating the meetings. It's binders and stacks of information and papers, and you guys take the time to go through it. You're there late into the evenings, and the administration takes the time to put together that information in a way that is very thoughtful and very complete, and I think presented in a way that makes it as understandable as it can be to take in that amount of information. So I just really wanted to say thank you to you guys who are here tonight, and also everybody else who sat on the committee. It's really been a pleasure to have an opportunity to observe our community and our district working together in such a unique, committed way, and I think it's one of the things that makes our experience here in Arlington very special. So thank you.
This is a really healthy process. I frankly, you know, I've been in administration, and looking at it from the administrative standpoint, this is a real hassle to have to try to get schools open while you're trying to report to a citizens committee. But they do it with a smile, and I think it's a very healthy process for the district. So.
Very good. Thank you so much, Mr. Malone. This district, as we know, is undergoing a tremendous transformation, and one we're all very excited about. And the work that you're doing, the work that we're doing together, is a good demonstration of how the entire community comes together in this. And the results are stunning, and we are excited about it. And we share your commitment to keep raising the bar on ourselves as well. So I appreciate that very much. Just for an idea of next steps, I know there's a CBOC application process open right now so that new members can apply, and we encourage people to do that online, and that the recommendations taken here will go into our board governance subcommittee for further consideration and review, and look at in concert with the remaining balance of that committee's very busy work in a legislative year. And so we will they will at work on that. I know that both Mr. Hogg and Dr. Reich, who couldn't be with us this evening, would also want us to share their personal thanks for your work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Can I introduce Lori Plamondon that came in late on our committee?
By all
member.
means, hello, Ms.
Yeah.
Plamondon. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, move forward on the agenda. Confirming that we do not have any cards for open forum for agenda this evening. Then we'll move straight to action item A, considered ordinance number 136, setting the tax rate. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Sullins, and Ms. Powell will give us a little bit of information about this, and then we've discussed this before. So Cindy?
Good evening, President Sullins, board members, Dr. Cavazos. We have, as you know, already adopted a budget for our 2016-2017 fiscal year. There is one item of business left to take care of relating to the budget, and that has to do with adopting the 2016 tax rate. Our fiscal year actually begins July 1st, so by state law, we have to adopt a budget prior to July 1st. However, we adopt our tax rate after we receive certified values from the appraisal district each year. By law, those are issued on or about July 25th of each year. So our budget was adopted in June for the 16-17 year. We have now received those certified values from the Tarrant Appraisal District. Our certified values is seen here, the history here. You can see that the 2016 values totaled $23.8 billion, and that's 9.4% higher than last year's certified value. So a very significant increase. In fact, I think that we look back today and found that 1998 was the last time we had a value increase this significant. So again, the 9.4% increase, or $2 billion increase in our values from last year. When we built the budget for the 2016-17 year, we had to make assumptions as to how values would grow. We had presumed, based on information we had been monitoring, that those values would grow by 5.5%. And so the values that were actually certified are higher than that. When we run the information through our funding models in the state aid funding template, what we find is that these higher values produce $10.4 million more in revenue for the general fund than we actually projected and included in the budget that was adopted by the board. So that's obviously very good news for us. You'll recall that the budget that we adopted has a total deficit of $31.7 million. $17.1 million of that is a use of surplus fund balance for the Sam Houston High School master plan, the building additions we were doing there. So we have a $14 million deficit, operating deficit for 16-17. With this additional $10.4 million in tax revenue, if nothing else were to change on the budget between now and year end, and if we ended exactly as we budgeted, then rather than having a $14 million deficit, operating deficit, we would have a $4 million operating deficit. Now we know that things occur during the year. We always make a mid-year budget amendment. We tend to, identify things during the year that we do need to adjust the budget for. Sometimes it's transfers just within functional categories. Other times it's actual increases in appropriations, and sometimes decreases in appropriations, and sometimes adjustments in revenue. So we'll make those adjustments typically with the mid-year budget amendment. But again, just based on the budget that's been adopted, and then the additional revenue produced by the higher property values, we would expect to end the year in a better position than what we originally budgeted. So that is certainly good news. On the debt service side, there are two parts to our tax rate. We have the M&O tax rate, which supports the general fund. That's the fund that pays for the day-to-day operating costs of the district. We also have the debt service tax rate. That is the tax rate that is levied each year just to raise money to pay the principal and interest that's due in that year on our bonded debt. And so the debt service tax rate that we're proposing tonight is 35.008 cents. That's actually 2.2 cents less than last year, and it's actually a little bit less than the rate that we anticipated that we would be bringing to you when we last talked about our tax rate in June. So that again is good news, and that's because again the higher property values. We are by law, a taxing entity can only levy a debt service tax of an amount that produces exactly what it takes to pay your principal and interest that's due in that upcoming year. A board or city council cannot make a decision to levy a debt service tax rate to beef up fund balance, for example, in your debt service fund. So we have calculated the tax rate that is necessary to pay our principal and interest on bonded debt in this upcoming year. And again, it's 35.008 cents. So the total rate that we are recommending for this upcoming year is $1.39.008 cents. And that is right at 2.3 cents less than last year's rate. And again, that entire change is on that debt service side, because we're recommending that the general fund side, the M&O rate, remain the same at $1.04. So again, our recommendation is that the board adopt a proposed rate of $1.39. We will continue to monitor our budget as we always do. We will bring a mid-year budget amendment, typically in March. And at that time, we would actually make an amendment for tax revenues based on the tax rolls that exist at that time. We'll also bring any other changes to the budget that we identify as the first half of the year progresses. One of the things that's required by all taxing entities under the truth in taxation laws of the state is that certain language be used when you adopt a tax rate. And so this particular tax rate that we have proposed will produce more real dollars than last year's rate did. So even though the rate itself is less than it was last year, because values have gone up, we will actually collect more total tax revenue than we had last year. So the motion language that we are required to use, again, it's prescribed by the state, it essentially says that. It points out that the property tax rate will be increased by the adoption of this $1.39 rate, and that amounts to a 6.9% increase in our tax rate. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, but that is our recommendation, is that we adopt the rate of $1.39.
Mr. Hibbs?
Ms. Powell, thank you. We've got good news here. This is really good news in the respect that last language is so confusing, because people are going to say you're increasing, but in actuality, it's 2.3 cents less than it was last year. And the property values are up so much that many will see that their property bill is higher. But our taxing level is actually lower. So the beauty of being able to go at least lower will keep it from being that much heavier of a tax burden or payment for the average homeowner. So, you know, I am happy and ecstatic that we have people like yourself, Tony Jollinger, Mandy, and the entire finance team that can go out and find us these best rates, these opportunities to have that funding or on the for interest and such that actually are coming in lower than what we were going out to the bond for, and even the bond oversight committee. This is a great thing for them to be able to see, because it's one more testament to how truly committed we are to financial stability. The other thing that I love is the fact that our deficit, when we were talking about our operating deficit of that we adopted, was $14 million. It's a big gulp for a lot of us board members. I mean, especially we knew that we had to do certain things when it came to teacher salaries, when it comes to helping with health care and such. The beauty of this, and we felt like there was a possibility that this might happen with the higher property values, is that it takes us down to a $4 million what we're looking at an anticipated deficit. The beauty of your team is, I believe, I'm going to write it in stone. No, that we're going to find out that we're very well within budget this next year. I'm very confident that we can be. If something should happen or we have to adopt, so be it. But what's really important is because some people may not understand the $17.1 million for Sam Houston. When we as a governmental entity, we can't just say we're taking it out of our savings account because we've done so well with our savings account that we're going to pay for these additions at Sam Houston. But we actually have to show it as being a deficit because it's not in the normal operating budget, correct?
Correct. What we actually show is an expense of that $17 million. That's the trigger that pulls it out of fund balance. So it does cause your overall surplus to appear, or deficit to appear higher.
But the beauty of it is that we're being able to take it out of fund balance and not have to cover it through a bond sale.
Right.
Because our fund balance is such that we can't afford that. That's what we were able to do with Diane Patrick Elementary. So, I mean, from a taxpayer standpoint, it's showing the fiscal responsibility, not only from the administration, but from this board, and the willingness to go ahead and do what we need to do, because in actuality, that $17.1 million for Sam Houston or the $23 million for Diane Patrick, ultimately it is allowing us, and I love how Ms. Sellens always says this, is allowing us to be able to open our schools this year and where we're not in an overcrowding situation, especially at elementaries. The work that's being handled at Sam Houston is will allow us to be able to get out of potential overcrowding there, allow us to be able to put in a 9th grade center, and it's going to lead to the overall health of our district. So, you know, I've just got to applaud my other board members. I think that we're hitting the marks where we need to be hitting the marks, and to show that we can get back to even within $4 million is a huge win for our district. So again, I thank you, and I appreciate all the due diligence and dedication that you and your team has. And with that, that's my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbs. Any more questions or comments from board members? Then we would need to make a motion at this time. Oddly, to the motion language again will say to increase while we are decreasing, because that's just the way the state code rolls. I do have one question before we vote, and it may not be something you have handy, but I would just be curious what the 2.3 cent, if it remained in the budget, what it would yield in tax revenue. If, you know, if this hadn't happened, how much additional tax burden there would be on taxpayers, because I like to look at that in 3 pieces. That, what that would be, plus the $17.1 million at Sam Houston, plus the $23 million at Diane Patrick that this district has invested to make sure that we stay extraordinarily tax efficient with the highest possible educational programming. So I'd be interested to see that piece. I don't really need it this evening, Ms. Powell, but I'd be interested.
And we would probably need to sit down and look at that. You know, again, that the reduction, the 2.3 cents, is on the side of the debt service rate, and we're limited there. We can only levy a rate that produces exactly, you know, what we need to pay our principal and interest on our bonds, and so
absolutely understand, and that it would trigger and go down to the. But you know, just if there were a different condition in the economy, if there's a different condition in the interest rates that we had been able to, and we wouldn't have known that when we started this bond program. So I'd be curious to know what that number might have been that we know now will not, because a 2.2 cent tax reduction is significant. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yeah. So we can, yes, we can get you that.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Powell. Ms. Walton?
Thank you, President Sellens. Well, after all of what's been said, I move that the AISD property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $1.39008, which is effectively 6.9% increase in the tax rate.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Walton and a second by Ms. Hudson. Any further discussion? Please vote. All trustees vote in the affirmative. Thank you very much, Ms. Powell and Mr. Drollinger and the entire organization. We now move to our next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Are there any items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda? Ms. Hudson?
Yes, President Solons, I'd like to remove item J for discussion, please.
Thank you. So we're removing item J. Could you read the title, please?
Consider repurposed salvaged vehicle number 429 flatbed truck.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Then if we could, we'll move forward with the consent agenda minus item J and Ms. Powell. No, there's no bids this evening, right? Okay, so then we would have a motion to accept the consent agenda except for item J. Then we'll move and consider it separately. Is there a motion for the?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Hudson, a second by Ms. Walton. Discussion, seeing none, please vote. All trustees vote in the affirmative. So now we'll move to item J. Ms. Hudson.
I was just wondering if you guys could speak a little bit to this truck and sort of the journey that brings us to this point.
Absolutely. So the consent item that was presented this evening was to basically unsalvage an older truck, a maintenance truck that the board had previously declared salvage. So this particular vehicle is a 1989 flatbed vehicle that had 158,705 miles on it, and we were using it as a welding truck, so it had some welding equipment mounted on the back. This vehicle is no longer of a condition that we should be driving it across town. But after the board declared it salvage, and as we were removing the welding equipment off of the back of the truck and preparing it to go to auction, our transportation staff said, you know, we could use this flatbed truck here on the service compound to refuel, or not fuel, but check oil and service oil of our buses and other fleet vehicles that are parked on the compound. And that would allow our transportation staff to be more efficient in how they move about the compound. So we bring this back to you all and ask for that ability to do that. We do not intend to place an inspection sticker on this vehicle, so we will not be driving it on city streets. So it has been, in effect, salvaged from its initial purpose of driving across town and doing work at different facilities. It will only be used as a service vehicle on our plant services lot.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. The reason that I wanted to have this pulled from the agenda is specifically because in light of the statements by my colleagues about the extraordinary attention to detail with our budgeting and how trying to make the most of every one of our citizens' dollars that goes into this educational experience. It goes down to every level. Every single person in the district takes ownership of that, and if they see an opportunity to make the most of something, they do. And it's really a very incredible sort of one-time example, I think, to show the public exactly what goes on behind the scenes that allows us to take fund balance and build schools where most folks can't do that. So I appreciate you going over it with us today, and I also appreciate your thriftiness and what is the term, maybe squeezing water from a rock or something like that. I'm not sure what the phrasing is, but I think if it could be done, you guys would be doing it. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
efficiency. Is there a motion?
I move to approve consent item J.
I second.
Motion by Ms. Hudson, the second by Mr. Hibbs. Any discussion? Please vote. All trustees vote in the affirmative, and very well said, Ms. Hudson. Any asset that has any value in it will be found. Thank you. We now move to our discussion item A, the Studer Group report. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Sullins, and this evening we'd like to invite our Studer representative to join us and provide a brief report on our results of our employee engagement survey and our parent satisfaction and our district services survey results. So this evening we'll summarize that data, and Robin will help us with that. So,
Thank
Robin,
you.
welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, President Sullen, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. I really appreciate the opportunity to share the results. These are your stakeholder surveys. They're part of the feedback that the district receives, and it really is based upon the climate and the culture. It's championing, excuse me, it's been a long day, I apologize. But it's I'm gonna give it up. It's really working to create that great place to learn, to work, and to achieve. And as I've listened this evening, that's been the discussion. And so it just pleases me to be here and share some additional information with you. Before I share the results, which is the feedback, I would like to say that the survey process is what's important. So it's not just getting the results report, but it's what your leaders do with that information with their staffs in rolling it out, having additional conversation about it, receiving additional feedback, and then creating some action steps for improvement. So as we look at those results, I want you to think about those things this evening. So the first one I'll share is employee engagement. Every employee in the district is invited to complete this survey. We do it online. We also provide some paper copies for those folks who might have difficulty managing to get to a computer. So we do that. And one of the great celebrations for the surveys you're going to see tonight are the participation rates. So if you'll notice, employee engagement, you had 5,900 employees complete the survey. That was a significant increase from the previous year of 4,100. And I just want to give kudos to Dr. Barlow and his team, because they really took this to task and said, we are going to really focus on participation and get as many people to participate as possible. And so they really owned that part of the process. The highest ranked items on the employee engagement survey were my principal supervisor provides me with good processes and resources to do my job. The other highest, my principal supervisor demonstrates a genuine concern for my welfare. The lowest ranked items were my principal supervisor consults me on decisions that affect my job. And you'll see the two numbers. The first number is this current year's mean for that particular item, and the one in blue is last year's, or 2015. So we're seeing similar items be in those lowest ranked items for the employee engagement survey. The only one that kind of flip-flopped was the third lowest, and that's the two listed at the bottom. As we're looking at this employee engagement survey, it looks like there hasn't been a lot of change. But what I'm going to show you is there really has been significant change. Even though the mean of the district did not change, as we dived into the data, what you see are pockets of excellence. So 42 of your schools and departments had a mean above a 4.0 on this survey, and that is really excellent, and that's a significant increase. Also, when we look at the themes, you're going to see that the themes that you have seen in previous years are not there. It's a little bit different. The percent of strongly agree responses increased, the agree responses decreased, and the neutral responses decreased. But there was a slight increase in the disagree area. But when you look at this, you will see over 60% of the responses were in the strongly agree and agree, which we just want to continue to see that grow. The overall district mean was a 3.69. For departments, it was a 3.87, and for campuses, it was a 3.66. 3.69 was the same mean as last year in 2015. But I want you to look at the comments, because in these surveys, we ask open-ended questions. The first, what is working well? The second, what could we do to improve? And then the third, is there anyone you want to recognize for good work? So I want to share with you some themes from those comments, because I think this is the important part. There was a lot of mention of the vision of the district and the direction the district is moving, and seeing that in a very positive way. And certainly the superintendent's voice in that process. The bond was seen as such a positive by so many people, and not just about facilities, but really it was about the increase in opportunities for students because of the change in infrastructure and the types of facilities that were being built. They also talked about the new connections between the district and post-secondary institutions in the area. Again, that increase in opportunity for your students. Professional development was seen as a support for implementing and executing the initiatives of the district. Also, technology was seen as part of that need to support those new initiatives and was given lots of kudos. Communication from the district out, and especially social media outlets, were commented on. I think that's interesting, because there's some of us who think we should kill all social media, but we don't. So that was seen as a real positive. Also, your thriving fine arts program and implementation of your GT program finally taking root, and there were lots of positives about that. Some challenges that were also listed. There's a need for standardization of practice and implementation of initiatives. There was some information. This is one of the things we'll be working on this year, is really hardwiring the rollout process, how we share that information and how we use that information in a more standardized way. Curriculum alignment and updating was around timing, to get that done earlier so people are better prepared for the beginning of school. But at the same time, they also talked about the positives of new types of support that are coming for that implementation of new curriculum. This next one, and the executive team kind of smiled at this one because they agreed. So it has to do with communications out from departments, especially when it affects classrooms. And the example that was provided was the consolidation plan for junior highs was rolled out, and the communication really was very positive about the why. And they said the rest of the plan was a little rough, and I think the executive team agreed. But that I know has since been handled better. Communication within departments and across departments, from schools to departments, departments to schools, any type of communication, there seemed to be concern that you don't always get the same answer. So some consistency in process, I think, is what they're talking about. This is one of the important things. Student behavior consistently has come up, but this time it's not just blanket student behavior, but it's about 10% of the population that they can't reach with normal PBIS strategies. So just need some help with those folks. And then there was the plea from other folks who aren't on the bond list to say, don't forget us. And if we need repairs, and I'm sure that will happen. Salaries was an issue. And then the need for positive feedback from all leaders. So those were the comments. What we didn't see, which you all have seen in the past, was the statement about too many initiatives. That was not there. It was about the support we're receiving to implement and execute, which is a huge positive step. And then also professional development, seen as that positive. So I think you're seeing lots of movement forward and very much in support of programs and of students and families. So next is the parent satisfaction survey. Again, look at the participation. So you increase by over 1,000 parents or caregivers. And again, this was Dr. Barlow's group who really dug in their heels and said, we're going to give it everything we have to encourage as many folks as possible to participate. Last year, you questioned the reduction in non-English speaking, and again, that growth is back. So just very commendable. And then the overall district mean, again, is at a very high level, 4.38, which is really excellent. Highest ranked items, number 1 and number 4, I think are the two you would be most proud of. My family is treated with respect at this school, and my child's learning is a high priority. Both of those, that's our business. So I think that's commendable. For your maintenance, and I know maintenance and custodial and buildings and grounds has gotten lots of kudos this evening, but again, from the parents, buildings are clean and well maintained. From a parent perspective, that's really impressive. And then my child has all the necessary supplies to be successful. Lowest ranked items, and when I say lowest ranked, I want you to look. None of these are below a 4.0. In fact, one of them is a 4.32, which we would consider very high. But because we do support continuous improvement, we think there's always room, right? So I wanted to share these. So school rules, discipline plans are enforced consistently at this school. This actually has increased over the years. What we talk about is this is more about communication than it is about really consistently enforcing the rules. But it's about communicating that out to parents. I regularly receive feedback from school staff on how well my child is learning. And I receive positive phone calls, notes, and or emails about my child from school. And what we know from working with parents, what they want to know is, does the teacher know who my child is? It's not about the assignments missed or the test grades, but it's about, do you know my child? So that's really what those are about. In the parent category, you've got all kinds of things to celebrate. So 86.6% of responses were in the agree, strongly agree category. That is amazing. That is just really, really impressive. And those responses increased while the others decreased, which means everything's moving up, which is really commendable. Themes from their comments. They had very specific statements about positive interactions they and their children have had with teachers. Lots of opportunities to recognize people for good work. They note a true focus on academics. That's that learning is a priority for my child. Tutoring opportunities. They really were very, very positive about the tutoring that's offered, and their only misgiving was, could we do more of it and more often? Consistency of discipline procedures are needed, and again, that's communication for the most part. They did talk about timely communication from campuses, so they have time to adjust schedules and prepare things when needed. easier access to leaders on campuses, and again, I think that's communication. Bullying is the next one, and we have seen that kind of comes and goes. So in all of our partners, we have seen that rise again this year. I'm not sure why, but I think, again, it's about communicating what are we doing about that, or what's the policy or the process. And then many, many teachers and staff members were recognized by parents. The parent survey, your parents, we tell you guys this all the time, your parents give volumes. I mean, it's like 600 pages of comments. It's amazing. And they recognize the receptionist, the school nurse, the cafeteria cashier, all kinds of folks who are kind and caring to their children. So just gives you all kinds of opportunities for recognizing good work again. The last survey results I'll share with you are the district services survey results. This is a survey that is taken by campus leaders, principals and assistant principals, and it assesses the quality of service that they receive from district departments. This survey is administered twice a year. So at the end of this year, you can see that the overall mean was a 3.92, which was an increase from last year. Also note the asterisk, there's an adjusted mean. The district made some decisions to increase the number of departments specifically assessed because they were looking for specific information. So when we adjusted those out and just looked at what we would normally measure, the adjusted mean would be a 4.06. So I did want to give you that information. There was a change, and we think that's important. All of the quality characteristics increased except for attitude, and it remained pretty much the same, which is at a pretty high point at a 4.0. The themes from the comments, which are really what they use in this survey to look at how they can improve: better communication across the organization about roles and responsibilities. And this we had a lot of discussion about. This is because you've had some changes. There's been some shifting and some positions that kind of changed names, and so it's that communication to people so that they know who to call. That's really what that's about. Again, processes are mentioned a couple of times on here, so this year we're going to really look at some process improvement pieces for district departments. There was also mention that special education has become just a huge umbrella of services, and maybe it's time to take a look at dividing that in order to provide better service. Accessibility was seen as an issue in some departments. Accessibility for us means they can reach a real person. It doesn't matter if they have to hit 0 a couple of times, but at some point they reach a real person in that department. And again, communication within and from departments was seen as a need. So that concludes my rollout of your results, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We appreciate you coming here today and going over this report with us. And we do have some trustees that have questions, so we'll start with Ms. Hudson.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. This is a lot of data, and especially as we continue to go over time, I think it's incredibly helpful. I definitely look forward to seeing Dr. Barlow and his team, and how they take this and turn that into sort of actionable items that we can move forward on to continue to improve. Right. I did have one question regarding the consistency of disciplinary actions. You kept saying that part of that is a communication key. I guess could you speak a little bit more to that?
And I don't know this for sure, but this has been our experience with other partners. And generally what it means is that leaders often take the position of, rather than using some keywords at key times to help parents understand what's occurring, that they say, this is policy. This is the policy. So our position is we should roll out a behavior plan in a very positive way. We're here to make sure all children are safe. Every parent wants that. And so these are the rules that we're going to follow, and these are going to be the rewards for following the rules, and these might be the consequences for not. So it's just taking a more positive position with parents.
And that makes sense. That being said, I would say that perception is reality.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Yes.
So I would be very curious to know, and this is obviously maybe not something that you could answer, but perhaps that we could get an answer for later on. Historically speaking, not just our district, but many districts have really struggled to apply discipline across the board the same for everybody, right? And yet still treat kids as individuals.
Right.
So I would be interested to know what the progress is that we've made towards that. I know PBIS has been in effect for a couple of years, and the goal of that is to help teach a culture of the school and be very proactive and help us to be more egalitarian in our disciplinary procedures. So I would like for us to visit that and find out, is it a perception issue and there's really just a communication problem, or is there more at heart and we still need to do some digging in our district and we still have some more work to do?
Yeah, and I think that would be good discussion with the rollout, and we can certainly assist with that. I think that would be. I think, too, in discipline, it's one of those things, fair, but you want to be fair, but you can't always be equal. So that's the other fine line that gets in there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Ms. Walton?
Thank you, President Sullins. I just want to, two things. On the parent satisfaction survey results, there was quite an increase. I know that's where we use some of the paper
Yes.
forms.
Yes.
Last year, I had some concerns about the distribution of those and the, were any steps taken this year to be sure that parents only got one of those per child instead of, kind of too many from some places, or maybe some misuse of those paper forms?
I don't know. We work with Dr. Barlow's office to do that and to send out those forms. I would imagine, could that happen? It could. Normally, we don't see multiple responses from parents. It's not something that we normally see.
But aren't they anonymous?
They are anonymous, yes.
So how can you, I don't understand how you can say we don't get multiples.
That has not been a question before, that there would be multiple parent completing it multiple times.
Well, yeah, and maybe not parents completing them too. There was some indication that, someone else might be filling these out or whatever. So and that was a question I had last year, so I just wondered if we had any kind of control on that this year that was different.
I do not think so.
Okay. And on the comment about the discipline,
Yes.
PBIS addressing 90% of the issues, was there any discussion or any other comments about how the other 10% could be, helped with their discipline?
No, ma'am, there were not. They were pointing out that this was a small group of students, but that teachers really needed assistance.
Well, even 1%,
Is a lot.
is a lot. If,
Yeah.
it's in if it's in my classroom,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Absolutely.
It can really disrupt. So I do hope the district is looking at ways to help those 10%. With gaining some discipline, and addressing that. I hear from teachers quite a bit about, it just takes one to really tear up things for everybody.
Oh.
And at some point, teachers have to strike a balance between, do I spend all my time helping this child develop discipline and let the other 21 kind of tread water? Or, where's the point where that trade-off doesn't have to happen?
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want everybody to be able to learn, and good discipline in the classroom is the first thing that has to happen before everybody can learn. So that's a concern, and I hope the district is looking at ways to address that.
And I think they are, and I think there was discussion around extended training and providing some assistance in that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mays?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robin.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate all the information.
Thank you.
One thing you said that I just want to reiterate, because I think it's very important, is that this isn't the complete picture.
Yes.
You receive the information, y'all do a great analysis of it, but then as a district, the leaders need to then take this information, have the discussion, anything that it seems like there's areas of improvement to be made, they need to work on having the discussion to implement that. And to me, that's very important. So I appreciate you saying that, because I think you understand what the needs should be to do with this information. A question that I had is, I understand that if we continue to ask the same questions, it allows us to get trends.
Yeah.
Is there any point in time where additional questions are either
That's a
added
great
or
question.
taken away?
That's a great question. And we're a fairly new company.
Yeah.
But we have been having that discussion that about the third year, especially on the employee engagement, that we provide not a much longer, but a longer and more detailed survey, if our partners decided that's what they wanted to do.
And then, one other question. In your opinion, since y'all have other clients and you see this regularly, if our overall district mean is the same and it's not trending up or down, is that something you normally see? Does it give an indication anything? Does it throw a flag, good or bad?
That's why we really delved into the data on the employee engagement, because we really felt like it would increase this time. That's why I wanted to share with you the 42 that are above that 4.0. So what we know is that there are pockets of excellence, so we just have to get in there and dig at those other places that aren't quite moving the way they should. So that's been our kind of positioning.
Okay. And so when you say dig, are you saying digging for those reasons or explanations, or are you saying as a district, that's part of what we need to do with that information?
And that's what they're doing, yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Mays. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Sullins. And I think that it's important to kind of interject some thoughts at this point. We're really, because we've done this survey now several times, several years, I should say, we're really at this evolution part of this survey. And some of the questions that Ms. Walton, Keisha, others have asked are really good questions. Those are the questions and discussions we're having internally.
Oh.
We're in the evolution stage of this, where we should consider, not saying we're there yet, but we should consider some type of identifiers, not for us, but so that the data can be more precise, so that when we have feedback of thousands of employees, and it's really important to keep in mind that the thousands of employees that answer, and parents, but we'll talk employees first, they're not all teachers, right? And they're not all high school teachers, they're junior high teachers, they're elementary teachers, and in order to get to the precision that we need for improvement, we're at that kind of crossroads of identifiers. And again, not identifiers for us to know who's answering, try to identify the person, but for the analysis to be detailed enough that it actually informs improvement. So I'll give you some examples. If some of those responses are related to elementary teachers, that's really important for us to know. Today, it's a large number of people, teachers and otherwise, that are answering these, right? If secondary teachers, high school in particular, have certain, level of specificity of things that they're either very comfortable with or need improvement on, that's a level of detail that today because of, again, the evolution, is not possible. So back to, you know, some of the questions earlier, were there duplicates? Were there outliers? Were there, you know, in every survey, you're going to hear just in a minute that the student engagement survey, that there are times where you toss out some of those survey responses for a number of reasons, error, et cetera. And so because the level of precision, because there is no identifier, it's really difficult to get to that precision that today, and again, we're in this crossroads, that we need, because it just generates more questions when this large mass of feedback is given back, and really, well, who's saying this? And not who in terms of the person, but is it the transportation? Is it security? Is it teachers? Is it, like I said, elementary teachers? Is it, you know, we down to, is it experienced teachers? Is it first, you know, 3-year teachers? And that gives staff and our whole system a way to strategically improve in terms of the district. So we're at that crossroads, and we'll have further discussion. It's not a decision to be made tonight about code-specific identifiers, but it would yield so much more opportunity, in my opinion, to precisely pinpoint improvement areas. And so I think that's something that we're you know, going right into this year, because it's so important for us to continue to improve in terms of our district and our employee engagement. Parents the same way, right? In terms of identifiers, to some extent, you know, you asked, I think, Sutton last year about, you know, some demographic type of information. Well, without a code-specific identifier or a code that you fill out, this, we know who you are, not we, but, you know, survey company knows, then we can do much more analysis on that and be more precise in our improvement. So it's an opportunity, and I think we're at that evolution, that maturity in our district, and that point where that's a really strong consideration for us.
Ms. Walton?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Was it still my turn?
I'm sorry.
I just that just jogged a question. Do we have a breakdown of this by campuses or departments?
We do by campuses, but again, it could be teachers filling it out or
Right.
non-teachers, and so it's just the number of people that fill it out by campus.
Okay.
So that again, that precision is still very
Right,
difficult.
it's a little bit, yeah, iffy.
Yeah. And you know, are there certain subject areas? Is it the math department at a certain school, or is it the 5th grade team? We
you
can
can't
get
tell, yeah.
all kinds of precision. Of course, understanding that if it's fewer than a certain number, just like student and testing and all this, that we won't identify. I mean, that you just don't, because it's too close to identifying the person. But there's all kinds of analysis that could be tied back to our system that would really help in improvement.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think, you know, it's something we do need to look at. As board members, will we see the breakdown by district, by the campuses and departments at some point?
Yes, you will,
Okay.
and those are the reports, just like, and I don't want to preempt the next presentation, but the campus reports for student engagement come after the district. The campuses have received theirs, and we wanted to give them a chance to roll it out with their staff, in all fairness, that
Sure.
their staff gets to see their results first before it's, you know, kind of in the open. We eventually post it on our website as well, by campus.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mays?
Yeah, I just wanted to, after you finish speaking, Dr. Cavazos, just say that I appreciate you saying that, because that's exactly what I've been wanting to know. Now what, I mean, we always say, what's the intention? Why are we doing this? And then once we know why we're doing it, then are we being able to grab those pockets? I love the survey results. I love bragging about Arlington ISD. We've got great teachers, we've got great leaders, wonderful parents, and great students. But at the end of the day, if the survey and the purpose of that is to draw out those pockets of improvement that we're not making, then I want to make sure that we're finding those pockets, therefore we're really getting the true value out of what we're doing. So I appreciate you clarifying that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing us deep delve and find those pockets.
Good.
And the only other thing I would add, if it's okay, is that as we move through the survey process, it's important to remember, and you'll hear it from the next presentation as well, that this is a tool.
Right.
And it is one tool. It's not the entire, you know, there's T-tests and coaching and all the things that happen in our system. And this is one very important tool.
One set.
But it's
set
one
of data.
tool for improvement. Alone cannot do it, but coupled with all the other systems we have, absolutely improvement.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. I'm reminded sometimes on these evenings, when we have discussions, what a good problem to have.
Absolutely.
You know, what a good problem to
Absolutely.
have, that we have engaged in a survey process, providing everyone in the system essentially a voice to comment on their leadership, on their environment, and everything else in the system, and then bring it forth to the board, share it with the community, and then roll out on what we're going to do about it.
Yeah.
So what a good problem that we have this evening is that we have grown in this process and in this discipline to make sure that all voices are heard. And our discussion this evening is on how we take that to the next step, how we make that better, how we pinpoint pockets, but still guard the survey person's ability to submit anonymously and have that as well. So we have a good question before us and a great team to address it. So I'm very pleased to see that we are moving forward in this discipline voice. I do have one question.
Okay.
And that is on the scale of the highest ranking and the lowest ranking items, and they seem so close. I
Yeah.
mean, I look at, a highest ranking item, and I'm just choosing one, has a 3.82 on my principal demonstrates a genuine concern for my welfare. A lowest ranking item is about feedback, is at 3.74. The separation between the
It's
highest
not
and
much.
lowest is 0.08 of a point.
Yeah.
And all moving towards 4.0.
Right.
So,
Right. That's why I say, just because that district mean has remained the same, I still think there's lots of good news there. And that's what I want you all to know. When you dive down, there has been great growth in that area. The comments alone indicate such a change in the climate, I think.
yeah, I agree. And the good news is appreciated, and the opportunity to identify challenges so we can address them is also good news.
Good.
So thank you very much for your
Thank
presentation
you.
this evening. We
Thank
appreciate
you all
you coming
for
in.
your attention. Thank you.
We'll move now to our discussion item B, the Gibson Consulting Report on Spring 2016 Student Surveys. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Sullins. And this evening, we also bring to the board a discussion and a presentation of student voice. So you've heard, we've talked a lot about employee and parent voice, and this is the student voice opportunity. And we survey our students, and you'll hear all about that. But I do want to take a moment to just reiterate what you mentioned, Ms. Sullins, which is that by giving people a voice, it gives us not only an opportunity to improve, but it really gives people ownership in that improvement process as well. So Gibson Consulting is here to present our student engagement results. And Eric, welcome.
Thank you for having us. Good evening. So this is the fourth year that we've done a survey in your district. And so we're really excited to share the results that we have for this year. There's some really interesting findings in here, as already been hinted by Dr. Cavazos. Normally, I either present with Amy Rappaport, or she's here. She's the project director, and she had a family emergency, so she wasn't able to join me this time. But we have some really good findings, and also, as has been mentioned, this is sort of an overview of the survey results. And there's a report that details a lot of what underlies these findings by grade level and subject area and campus, and a lot of that is not necessarily disaggregated here. But also we provide campus reports, and those campus reports are broken out. They're provided by campus grade level, and within them they have by subject area the results for most, if not all, of these items. And they're used, I think that's one thing that makes this survey sort of one that I really enjoy doing every year, because Here in Arlington, the results are used in a different way than they're used in a lot of other districts. They're actually disseminated not only eventually publicly on the website, but at campuses to the principals, and they pass it along to their staff and instructional coaches and people that are doing the work in the actual classroom practice. And so while a lot of this sort of gives you an indicator of some things that are going well or not going well or need improvement, a lot of the question of why aren't those things going well are things that are answered at the campus level. They look at the results and they say, here's a pattern, let's think about how we can make this better or keep doing well. So today we're going to talk briefly about the survey approach, which I know there's some questions about, might be some questions about that. I know that's always of interest. Our main findings, and then whatever questions you have as well. I know I have a little bit less time than previously to present on these results, so for a few of the slides, I'll kind of move more quickly through them just so we can get through. And these are the 6 areas that the survey covers. The survey covers quality of instructional practices, school safety, preparation of college and workforce, after-school activities, which is a new section added last year to the survey, and then quality of facilities and lifelong learning environment questions. So again, this is the 4th year collecting data from the based on the 12th grade survey. We did that first in the 2012-13 year. And we used that survey, first of all, that was more geared towards a student exit survey. So it was the perceptions of seniors. But we had batteries of questions based on those 6 areas. We did some sort of internal validity checking and consistency checking to make sure the questions were sort of asking what we thought they were asking and kind of fine-tune the questions. And then we rolled it out to all the grades starting in year 2014. And this is our, again, 3rd full year of giving the survey to all of the 4 grades that we survey. But what's really interesting is, starting with this year is the first time we have a chance to compare responses to the same students who took the survey in 2014. And so what we have is, I highlighted these boxes, orange, yellow, and purple here, but these students who were in grade 6 in 2014 are now mostly in grade 8 in 2016, not all of them, of course. And same for grade 8 are now in grade 10. And so if you look across, we have about 82% of the respondents in 2016 who were in 6th grade in that orange box also responded to the same survey in 2014. So who we miss there are students that leave and move away and new students that come in. So there's a gap there, but a very large proportion of survey respondents responded in both years. And so we've been able to take advantage of that in some of the reporting and think about how their perceptions have changed, if at all, on some of these questions. So survey administration. This year we had a small uptick in response rate, but it's a response rate of 84% of students, which is really high. Just to put it in context with other student surveys, we do other student surveys in other school districts and across the state and other states, and we don't get response rates like this elsewhere. Part of that reason is that we, and again, work with Dr. Barlow and his staff to get these survey packets out to every campus to try to make sure that we get as many students as possible to respond. We have a 2-week window. We have paper and online surveys. We have English and Spanish. We do have ID linking, so we link them to the student IDs. So we're able to see who's responded and already responded and things like that. I'll talk more about that in a second. And so of the students in our survey, we had 14,917. We removed a little less than 300 of those for several reasons. Part of that was they went in and answered a few questions, not enough to be a complete, and so we had to lose those. We also did exaggerator analysis, things where if a student goes in and answers all strongly agree or all strongly disagree all the way up and down a page, because we could tell because we had reverse coded questions to sort of catch people if they were just clicking along. But also we look at timing. So if they answer every question within, or an entire page of questions within 5 seconds because they clicked all the way down, that's too fast to read all the questions. So we had certain thresholds of how long each page should take, and if they were below that, we chunked them out too. A couple other things, but that generally we clean the data, and you can see that the response rate here is actually, it's 88% for grade 6 and 8. We have really high participation for those campuses. And if you look at grade 6, 48 of the 53 campuses that participate had over 80% response rates, 10 of the 11 middle schools. And then for high school, it's a little bit harder. Obviously, students are moving around a little bit more in high school. And so we have great campus liaisons that we work with at each campus that sort of pick up the other students that are sometimes hard to track down. And they go and track down more of those students, which helps our response rate. But of course, they can't catch all of them and get them to take the survey. So tonight, again, we're going to focus a little bit more on the first 4 areas. All 6 areas are in the report, but we just wanted to pick some areas that had some interesting findings for this year. So first area is quality of instructional practices. In this set of questions, we ask about the quality of teaching at your school, and we do it by subject. So we say, thinking about your math teacher this year, tell us what you think the quality of teaching was like. There's a response scale that runs from poor to excellent or 1 to 4 at the bottom here. And I know in previous years we've presented a lot of some of the means and things like that. This year we focused more on also giving some sort of substantive interpretation in a couple of different ways. One way is by looking at the percent who responded positively versus negatively, but also we do some multivariate things here in a minute as well. So, I'm sorry, this first graph, I'm going to step through it, but just to orient you, it's the quality of instruction by subject and by grade level. Grade level runs across the x-axis at the bottom. And on the left-hand side, it's the percent who answered positively, good or excellent. And I'm going to highlight these lines that are blurred out here by subject so you can kind of see the trend. So the first 2, the highest quality of instruction ratings were given pretty consistently in English and social studies. And so this is very close to last year, but a couple of these went up. Actually, for several subjects, they went up this year. But the gaps are, the magnitude of the gaps are very similar to last year. And so, again, English is at its highest point. It is the highest point across all of them, but it's high in 6th grade. There's a dip in 8th grade to 75%. It goes back up. Social studies starts a little lower at 72%. That started actually a little bit further away, a little lower last year, but it catches up by 12th grade to be the highest rated subjects by 12th grade. If you move to math, though, this is where, and this is very similar to last year, as things sort of get harder. A lot of the feedback we heard from principals previously are things about these get harder across the grades, and the nature of teaching math changes. But also, very related to this, we see all this exact same dip last year, but I think it's widened just a touch, if I remember right, is in science. And so science has a really high quality of instruction rating, but then you see that dip in 10th grade, which is the grade when you start to see a lot of teaching of sciences that include math. So your chemistries and things like that, right? Physics. And so it's kind of interesting that that's when that kind of kicks in here as well. So these are, again, those are high level quality of instruction overall. But what's important about understanding the results is we want to disaggregate the results, but also do so in a way that's comparable. So we do some things in the reporting, and this is another reason I get excited about doing the work with Arlington, is that several of the staff we work with and Dr. Barlow really push us to be intellectually curious about the ways, about the different analyses we do and the way that we can do things in a way that are useful and are sort of action-oriented results that people can take and think, about their practice at the different campuses. And so we do these multivariate results that allow us to look at not only the year-to-year comparisons, but to sort of do an apples-to-apples comparison of like students and see what kinds of factors are predicting, I guess, higher levels of quality of instruction. We want to see if comparing or, I guess, controlling for all else, what types of things are associated with systematically different, higher or lower levels of quality of instruction, because those are informative for saying, okay, this is going well at the campus, and comparing statistically similar students across campuses, our campus is still higher on this or lower on this, or our grade is higher on this and lower on this. And that kind of information is, again, sort of is conveyed in the report to the campuses. So here we're just going to focus on the math and English. The results are very, very similar, so it's easy to kind of consolidate them. The first set of results about things that are associated with higher ratings of instruction are student characteristics. These are things that aren't mutable in the sense of that's inherent characteristics of a student, but it tells you a little bit about who is rating your quality of instruction higher. And most of these probably aren't surprising, then we'll get to the more interesting results. Kids who have a higher GPA rate their classes higher. Female students and white students both rate them higher overall, but there's some some variations on that in a second. And then students who are non-LEP, non-special ed, and not economically disadvantaged all rate their classes a little bit higher. But when you start to, I guess, disaggregate this or think about it in a way where you're looking at subgroups, if you look at, for instance, not just the higher performing students, but you look at the higher performing students that are economically disadvantaged, they actually rate their courses really high. So that sort of higher performing part is sort of not canceling out, but overshadowing the economically disadvantaged part. They still are rating their courses high. Similarly, even though Hispanic students on average rate their courses at lower quality of instruction, the highest performing group of Hispanic students rate their classes the highest of all students. So that subset of students is really rating their courses high. Really interesting. And then when you look at students who receive special education services, those students generally rate, again, their courses lower quality, but if you want to look at across the different course types, they rate math higher than English and social studies. So taking a step back from student characteristics a little bit and thinking about things that can be affected by district actions and school actions and teacher actions. One, again, probably not surprising, but students who report enjoying learning on this survey and their perceptions, they give higher ratings. Students who feel more safe, and that's an important one because safety is a big part of the survey and the results that are here. But they significantly report higher, learning environment, better learning environment. This one is really interesting. So, just from work on campuses and the literature, there's always this sort of debate about what class size, how it matters, right? So we have their actual class sizes, and we looked at statistically comparing to see how class size mattered in terms of quality of instruction. And so, again, controlling for a whole other battery of factors, class size was not a significant factor for predicting quality of instruction rating being any higher or lower than anything else. It was not significant, except for one pocket of findings, which was grade 12, just for English and math courses. There, and actually even just for a subset of campuses that we have in the report, but for those classes, you see that smaller class sizes does predict higher quality of instruction rating just for those grade 12 English and math courses. But otherwise, there's no effect, which is really, from my standpoint, is fascinating. Another thing that's really interesting, and we don't have time to sort of get in the weeds on this, but in the report we talk more about it, there's a correlation between different strategies, instructional strategies, being delivered in the classroom according to the perception of the student. So the student reports this is going on. Activities around relevance or something like that is happening. And those are correlated with higher and lower instructional ratings by campus and by grade. And we talk a lot about that. And I'll get to instructional strategies in just one second. But where let me page through here, sorry. Where the value of these multivariate models really comes in is that there are statistically significant differences, controlling for all else, across campuses and grade levels. And I just want to emphasize that. That's where the work comes in for the campuses, because where some campuses are significantly higher or lower than their peer campuses and similar campuses, students at similar cross campuses, they can sort of see like, okay, we need to think about what's going on in math at our campus in 8th grade or whatever it might be. And for the campuses that are sort of in that target range, they probably are doing a great job. And then we have that by grade level. We also have it by subject, and there's deviations across all those. We also have it across years. I mentioned earlier that the percentages ticked up a little bit between the years. After controlling for all the other variations, so think about how the population of students changes from year to year, grade to grade, campus to campus. When you do an apples-to-apples comparison across the campuses that flow through your grades, there's still a significantly higher level of quality of instruction reported from your students this year. We did not see that previously. We didn't see it in the initial year, the 14 to 15. We now see it from the 15 to 16. There's an increase. The next, as I mentioned a second ago or foreshadowed, the next section's on instructional strategies. And so we ask specific questions about math, English, science, social studies classes. We also actually ask for the higher levels, we ask about their language, if they have any foreign language classes as well. And we ask whether these strategies are going on never, sometimes, most of the time, or always when they're in classes. So just to give a quick there's a lot more in the report about this, but just to give a quick view of what's going on, these were the strategies of interest to the district when we started the survey. And so it's asking questions about whether a teacher held their attention, gave them a choice in how to demonstrate knowledge, show what they know in writing, stop to check for understanding, whether their student felt comfortable asking questions in the class, whether in-class activities helped them learn. So these are means, just to kind of give you a quick overview of all of them. And we're looking for these means to hit. When you look at, this is scaled to other surveys, and you hope to get that 3 threshold of most of the time these things are going on. So this is just grade 12. And you see that grade 12, the only one that sort of peaks over that line is shown what the students show what they know in writing, but the rest don't meet that line. But most of these bars are a little higher this year except for math. Math across the board has always been a little lower, and this year it's lower on all these strategies for reasons that for the teachers in the room can probably guess, right? But if we go from grade 12 and we sort of flow down to 6th grade, if you kind of fudge your eyes open and just watch the pattern, you'll see that most of these bars start to sort of edge towards that threshold of 3. And so we have 10th grade, and they move over a little more, and 8th grade, and 6th grade. And by the time we hit 6th grade, almost all the bars either get right at it or cross it. There's one major exception. The major exception is show what we know in writing. In 6th grade, that actually went back down, which is different this year. So that's something that we detail a little more in the report, but that's interesting. And then held my attention doesn't quite, and choice in demonstrating knowledge doesn't quite hit that red bar. They kind of recede a little bit too, but not as strongly as the show what is known in writing. So the next set of questions ask about student engagement. And so here I'll just kind of run through. The table goes again from 6th to 12th grade across the columns, and the items from the survey are kind of an abbreviated version of the questions are down the side. So when we ask whether classes were boring, just straight out, you see the percentage there. It's pretty low, less than a third, or almost less than a third all the way across. It's the lowest in 6th grade. So only 22% said their classes were boring. Enjoyed learning in class. Was highest in 6th grade at 64%, and it decreases across, but it never gets below, or it gets just below 50%. But the courses were challenging, again, over a third, almost half across the board. It gets higher as you go across, so as you get into the upper level grades. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the technology in a second, but if you'll notice, over half of all students in every grade said they were given opportunities to use technology. When we ask questions about that, that's really kind of a significant thing this year. And then in this one here, this is where you see the biggest decrease across grades. Teachers explaining why they're learning what they're learning. What's the relevance here? So with this question, it's high in 6th grade, but as you go across, it's still decreasing. There's almost the exact same pattern last year. The last one, it's one we just asked from the 12th grade questions stemming from the first year, but we asked about classes being connected to material in other classes. And so about a third reported that that's going on. So picking apart that technology question I just mentioned, this is the trend across time. So here what we see is this is the biggest increase of any, I think, single item on the entire survey, and particularly in 6th grade. So when we first started giving this survey, 38% of 6th graders said, that bottom blue line said that they were able to use technology in their classroom or at some point during the day, and that's increased to 50%, a huge jump. And then you see almost as big, they're more like 10-point jumps for 10th and 12th grade. The one line that stayed flat here, or got down maybe a point or two, is 8th grade. What's interesting about that, there's kind of theories we've been kicking around about that, but 8th grade is the only survey that we ask. We sort of recruit the students during their technology class, so it's during their computer instruction class that they have to take, they're mandated to take during that grade. It's a way that we can easily reach, that's why we have like a high response rate. So there must be something there of the baseline being that they're already in a technology class. Are they using it elsewhere, or like how they're relating? It's definitely something for future research, but we're starting to see a pattern emerge. It's kind of interesting. But it's going up. Technology use is going up. It's interesting how a lot of these results, by the way, are sort of triangulating nicely with some of the results we saw earlier with the surveys from teachers and parents, and I find that really interesting. The next section is on school safety. I know I'm running short on time, so I'm going to move quickly. safety is a big area that has gotten a lot of attention. And so in general, we ask a whole lot of questions about safety, but the first one asks how safe students feel in different areas of the school. And so the response scale goes from not safe to very safe, and generally we show the percent that say the right-hand side of the scale, yes to that. On this next one, I'm just going to show the extreme left hand of the scale, which means the students who reported they don't feel safe, because I think that's kind of the most salient condition that we'd want to know about. And so here, this is the percentage who said not safe. And so outside around the school is where kids feel the least safe, and that means on school grounds is how we ask the question. We don't ask about the neighborhoods around the schools. That might be something to consider for future surveys. But it's highest in 6th grade, 19%. Last year it was 18%, so it's gone up a percentage point. And locker rooms is next, bathrooms is after that. So those are kind of three. And this rank ordering, by the way, is consistent. Like every year it's been the same. The only difference is this year, these items that I just highlighted all went up a point. I think one went up 2 points to be accurate. But the rest, this is not the majority. The majority of them actually went down a point or stayed the same. But there's a lot of consistency in here, and so it kind of, again, highlights. But I think actually what this does mask is that there's variation that occurs at the campus levels. And when we provide this information to the campuses, some campuses that had higher levels of kids not feeling safe, like in their bathrooms, for instance, had drops this year. So they're doing something differently. Maybe they're being responsive to results they saw from last year, maybe not. But anyway, there's variation when you drill down a little more on this. So the next set of questions, we usually just present means on this, but now we have some kind of interesting results over time. And so I want to break out the items on school safety really quickly. And also this is sort of, again, an interesting triangulation point from the perceptions of parents and staff talking about discipline and things like that. This is a little different, this is about safety, but the students that report here about their, feeling they're being teased or put down or observing it, it generally is lowest, you'll see across all these tables, for 6th grade, and it ticks up in 8th grade, junior high. I think junior high teachers probably could attest to that, some of that. And then it ticks back down in 10th and 12th grade. Not uniformly for all these items, but you'll see that pattern. So there, on these items, you see that, for instance, students who report that they see a lot of teasing or kids being put down because of their race ethnicity, it jumps from about a third to 39%, so it goes up about 3%. And then it goes back down in 10th grade and then back up in 12th grade. But for the next item, it stays the same between 6th and 8th grade. So this is students who at the school are teased or picked on. And then it drops for high school. I'll talk a little bit about bullying here in a second, which is distinctly different. We define them on the survey differently, like we ask specific questions to get at the difference here. And then asking about whether most students in their school like to put others down, so how they treat other students. You see, again, the tick up there in 8th grade, but then it drops down in 10th and 12th grade. So really quickly, we were able to, you can see that there's differences here from grade to grade. But one thing we wanted to do is look at whether students' perceptions had changed over time. So if we take this graph and we get rid of the sort of changing student body by grade and campus over time, and we look at the same students responding in 8th grade who also responded back in 6th grade 2 years ago, I'm going to sort of break the same, this is the same table, but only the first row. That new red number there, I've just grayed out the other numbers, is the change. So for 8th graders, what's their change since when they took that survey 2 years ago? And so for them, it went up about 3%, which is about what we see in the population. We see less of a drop for 10th grade. We see a 3% decline. And then we see, again, a small tick up for 12th grade, but not as big as you see for the whole population. So what's important here is you'll see some deviation, and that deviation is giving us an apples-to-apples comparison of the same student and how the perception is changing over time. And the other change are kids that are flowing in and out of the system that aren't part of those repeat survey. So we can do the same for the next item. Sorry, I had circles. And again, no change here for 8th grade for students being teased or picked on. But you see a big drop there for 10th grade and a drop there in 12th grade, even though it actually goes up at the population level. So for those same students that are in both 10th and 12th grade and took our survey, they saw a decrease in students being picked on or teased versus the population that saw a slight tick up. We get to do a lot more with this in the report, but I wanted to give you an idea that we can sort of get some neat comparisons here. So same thing for the last one, but I'm going to jump to the next one because I think there's some interesting results here. So we also asked students about whether there are too many fights and about bullying. And on the survey, we actually defined the bullying and what that looks like. So a third of students in 6th grade said that there were too many fights in their school. So the baseline starts pretty low percentage-wise. But again, the type, you can think about the sensitivity of a student to answer that there's too many fights. One fight to them may be too many. Is very different in 6th grade than 8th grade, 10th grade, or 12th grade. So you see a huge jump. The biggest jump is from 6th to 8th grade, and then it decreases there for 10th and 12th. And 8th grade across the board is the highest jump for all of these again. But let's look at the change. The change is, what's interesting here is that for the same students, them sort of saying that there are too many fights in their school jumps pretty significantly in 8th grade. And even when it's declining in 10th and 12th grade, for those same students, you still see that increase that are saying there's just too many fights at their school. Again, this varies a lot school to school, which isn't borne out here. The next highest one is cyberbullying. This is one that was really interesting and I think triangulates nicely with what we've heard elsewhere as well. And that's with social media and things going on online. Again, as you get older, there's more access to devices and less regulation of devices, but also over time. There's also a sensitivity effect. So if you think about we have over time data here. So over time, you see more and more social media campaigns, things when you sign on to Facebook talking about preventing bullying, cyberbullying, don't let it be a part of you, you can block out people. So there's a sensitivity effect that's occurring as well, which is really interesting. But when you disaggregate here, I guess, by item and you pull out physical and verbal bullying away from that, there's actually lower rates here. And you see that, for instance, verbal bullying here starts at 55% in 6th grade. It goes down to 53% in 12th grade, but for the comparison group of the same students, even though it ticks up in 8th grade, it drops both between 8th and 10th and 10th and 12th. So verbal bullying and physical bullying also drops except for that tick up in 12th grade. So it's a flatter and less of an increase, and actually in some cases a decrease, when you sort of pull that out and differentiate away from other types of fights going on and teasing going on and things like that. When we go to staff respect, I'm going to just quickly step through this, but overall staff respect items were really high across the board. And so you see over 80% across the board for teachers here respect me, kind of the same tick where respect goes down in 8th grade, I guess mirroring the opposite of the student results. But then ticks back up there in 10th grade, then back down in 12th. The highest item on there is school staff believing that every student can succeed. It's at 91% in 6th grade. And then it drops across until 12th grade. And I'll talk about that here in a minute in context with student college going. And then the last one is teachers treating their students fairly. We've already heard a little bit about treating students fairly tonight. And so here you see it's at 66% in 6th grade, and then students' perception is that it's lower in 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade. I won't go through all the changes because we're running short on time. This next set of questions is on preparation for college and workforce. And so the first question we asked was whether students had applied for college. And so the self-reported rate here for 2015-16 is at 20% of students saying they did not apply. Last year it was 17%, so it's ticked up in terms of percentage of kids who said they haven't applied. And it's back to where it was the first year when we asked the questions, which is back in 12-13 on the left there. So let's look at who now is saying that they applied or didn't apply to college compared to last year. Well, actually, before we do that, I'm going to show the race distribution here really quickly. Sorry. Again, this sort of like disaggregates in a different way, but the way that these graphs show are that on the left-hand side, you have the graphs by year of no applications. So again, it went from 21% down to 17% and back up to 20%. Where did those students who aren't applying for college anymore, where did they come from, I guess, from previous years? You see the biggest tick down here is in students who say they applied for both 2-year and 4-year schools, multiple schools here, different types. So that went from 31% to 28%. The percent who said they are applying to 4-year only schools actually went up a percentage point. And then also the 2-year only went down 1%. But really that's your trade-off, that's your balance point of where you see less applications this year. Mostly they're coming from those students who previously were applying for both 2- and 4-year schools. And that's important context for the remaining slides. This is by race ethnicity. And so what we see, this is just 2016. And so what we see here is that this is comparing percent within race categories. So let's look at Hispanics, for instance. Hispanics, the rate that did not apply for any college at all is 25%. It's the highest. So just within a race category comparison, that's where you get the highest percent. And where they did apply for college, they mostly applied for 2-year schools. And they were at lower rates compared to their peers of applying for 2- and 4-year and 4-year only schools. So where did we see the highest applications for 2- and 4-year multiple schools or 4-year only? Those were with the black students and Asian students there. Those are the circles you see. So what about changes over time that I hinted at a second ago? I changed the order of slides. So where did the no application rate come from? Last year actually there were more Hispanic students who, there was a higher change in Hispanic students that said they weren't applying for any college or university. This year it's still 3%, which is the same as last year, but black students had an increase of 5% from last year. It said they weren't applying for any college or university. And so now the rest of the bars can kind of tell us where those numbers came from, or the reverse of those. And so there's a decline here in application rates for 2-year only. Really the increase that we see, so in other words, for the 2-year only applications, where you see the reduction for black students is in 2-year only and 4-year only schools. So that adds up to that no application rate. And the only place you see an increase in application rates from 2015 to 2016 is for white students who apply for 4-year only and for Asian students who apply for 4-year only. So that's what's driving the increase on the bars we saw earlier. We do a lot more disaggregations in the report, but one other way we want to do this is we took the same bar chart from earlier about the breaking out race ethnicity percentages, and we did it by their performance using GPA. So here we took kids who generally make mostly A's. These are rough cuts. And we compared them with kids who make mostly B and C. And so what's interesting here to notice is that students in the top row who are making the highest scores in their courses are applying here to 2- and 4-year schools, as you would expect. But in comparison with students who are B level that can apply for college and university at the same rate, are doing great in school, but look at how many of them are applying for none or only 2-year schools. And so that rate there, and you can see it by race ethnicity, is really interesting. And even disaggregating by performance, what you see is that the Hispanic rate that was higher for no applications and only 2-year applications a couple slides back is still higher here than their peers, even for the highest performing Hispanic students. So there's definitely some work to be done, in that area to figure out, how we can get some of those students applying for colleges. And this, again, this differs from campus to campus, but it's really an interesting pattern. So the next set of questions ask about school counseling, the ways in which students worked with a counselor. We asked 4 items about how they work with counselors, things about applying for colleges and planning for future. And what we see this year is that there is less work being done with students who didn't apply for any schools. But for students who did apply for schools, particularly the 2- and 4-year schools there's a tick up. So overall, if you look at the overall mean or the overall rate, there is more work being done with counselors this year, just slightly. But most of it is in that category for students who applied for both 2- and 4-year. It's decreased most with students who are going for only 2-year schools or only 4-year schools. And I mean, there's some hypotheses there about why that may be, but it's some interesting patterns. There's a big deviation this year. So we also ask about college-bound activities. Last year we presented, I think, all the means on them. I want to give you the high-level results. Results are this. When we ask students about the things they're doing towards college and career, for the 6 items we asked about, overall, there's less college-bound things going on from the student's perception. They're doing less things to get ready or apply for college, particularly for students who say that they're not submitting any college applications, so that's not surprising. But overall, AP and dual credit course taking is up this year in terms of rates according to student perception. And then college visits, scholarship applications, and community service activities are down. I highlight scholarship applications because, one, it was a big drop, but also it's in contrast to what staff are saying on the next slide. So I just want to, I'll come back to that in 1 second. For career bound, it was almost exactly the same. The only decrease there was for students visiting with their counselor about career options when they go in for their career cruising sessions and talk about courses. So, but it's almost exactly the same. So going to the staff support, so this is the student's perception of what the staff, the counselors in particular, and advisors are doing towards getting them to go to college or get ready for their career. For the college-bound items, what we saw an increase in is a pretty big increase in students saying that they were encouraged to apply for scholarships. So less are reporting that they are applying for scholarships, but they're saying at least I was encouraged to apply for them. We also see an increase with help from counselors with college essays. But where we saw decreases, which kind of resulted in an overall decrease here, is that there's less of students saying they were told about admission requirements, the likelihood of being accepted into different schools with different requirements, and then how to get application fee waivers. And that last one was pretty important for some of the modeling stuff that I'll talk about in a second. It's in the report. But the percent of students who said they were participating in financial aid events and in financial aid nights and things like that went down pretty significantly. For career bound, again, about the same. There's a small decrease in the rate of counselors discussing the K class options with students. So I've sort of foreshadowed a little bit about this with a couple of the descriptive results I just presented, but this last set of slides is on applying for college. So it's a multivariate model, again, predicting whether or not a student applied for college, what factors are associated with that, again, controlling for a whole battery of questions. We want to know what things are associated with applying for college. So that 2016 decrease in application rates when you compare like students to like students is not statistically significant. So it's a drop, but it's not a significant drop. There are significant differences across campuses here, just like with the quality of instruction. These are kind of instructive to campuses, so when we send that information out, they can kind of see what's going on, what's changing. The students that are most likely to apply, obviously, they report more college-bound activities, but the ones that mattered most are the ones who say they talked to counselors about scholarships. So again, it ticked down this year, the ones who said that they had talked to her applying for scholarships, but it was important. The ones who say they had engaged with a counselor about scholarships are statistically significantly more likely to apply for college. And then also going to a school event or financial aid night. Again, that ticked down this year, but for the ones who did say that they had, they've gone to those events, they're more likely to apply. So higher performing predicts more likely to apply for college, but in particular, it's for the white and black students. So those, remember the sort of difference we saw with the Hispanic bar of the high-performing Hispanic students that weren't applying for college? That holds up statistically in the model as well when you compare students with similar other characteristics like attendance rate and FRL status and things like that. The higher-performing economically disadvantaged students are more likely to apply for college than other economically disadvantaged students, which is really important here. They're sort of finding ways to get all the applications out and not feeling that they can't do that. Students who report engaging in volunteer and extracurricular activities, which is a new area of the survey we asked about. But the students who are less likely to apply statistically are special education students, lower performing male, and really significantly students who reported that their teachers don't respect them or take their opinions seriously in class. And the very last section is the newest questions, which I'll quickly go through, which is we ask questions about after-school activities, extracurricular and co-curricular activities. The first item is about whether they participated in co-curricular activities at school. That was actually not data that we collected in the survey. It's data that the district provided with all the course records. Then we asked about school-affiliated activities, off-campus activities, and then service and volunteer. The gist of it is that all the black items stayed the same. The two green items at the top for 8th grade and 10th grade went up. So the percentage of students who are involved in co-curricular classes went up in 8th grade by, I think, 2 percentage points, and up by 3, I think, in 10th grade. And then for community service and volunteer this year, it went down by a point or 2 in each of the red categories there. So it went down to 30% for 6th graders. One thing that I will note is that the percent of 6th graders that say they had at least one co-curricular class is 22% there. That's much lower than the other categories. It's because there's less opportunity for 6th graders to take a co-curricular class, some sort of art, music, sports class, things with sports activities. But it's exactly the same percent as last year. And then overall, the percent who engaged in at least one of the above activities last year was 94%. This year it's 89%, mostly driven by that decrease in students who say they're engaging in community service and volunteer. I just went through a lot very quickly, and I appreciate your time. And I will say that there's even more of this that's in the report and in the campus level reports. And again, as we get the final feedback from you all and from the district staff, and we are adding more interesting analyses as more questions come up, we'll finalize those and hopefully get those out soon. And again, we're excited to sort of see how this can help inform things going on at the campus level again this year. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It is a lot of information.
It is a lot, yes.
And maybe take a minute to process some of it, or maybe even a week or so. But outstanding that it's here so that we can learn and grow. Ms. Mays.
Thank you. I just have one question, and that is for the quality of instruction portion. Was that information broken out by students that were in like AVID programs, IB programs, pre-AP, AP, or is it just in general?
It's just in general. We don't have that information about whether they took advanced coursework and what kind of, I'm particularly interested in that. That's one area I do a lot of research in. But yeah, I think that'd be a great area to have disaggregations in. Yeah, I have some thoughts about how to get there, but I think that's, I think that's something we can possibly do in the future.
Make sure you share those thoughts.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Hi. Excellent presentation. I can tell that a lot of work has gone into it. It is a lot to digest. Quite frankly, I could just geek out on all of this all night long. I love it, and I think it's, I hope that the people who are at the campuses really find this data useful, especially, you know, each campus is going to be a little bit different in the way that they approach things and the students that they have to serve. So I really hope that, although this is very interesting at this level, I'm hoping that it provides information that's really useful at the campus level. And I'm quite certain that our administration will be facilitating that with the campuses. So a couple of questions that I have, and I'm not sure if this is the exact same thing that Ms. Mays asked or if it's a little bit different. The change in the application rate. You were looking at A students, B students, and C students, so you were looking at them by GPA. I'm wondering, and this, again, may be the same thing, do we know if some of the students who are applying for zero, you know, post-secondary education, are any of them the folks that are earning certifications through our programs already?
You're speaking specifically about certifications like through AP?
Like the Fire Academy.
Oh, you're talking about through the career technology
Career
certifications.
Tech, right. Is it because they were able to complete something within our district is I guess sort of where I'm going with that. Is there less of a need for those students?
So what I'll say is we don't have it in any way attached to if they've obtained a certification, but we ask them questions about whether they have or whether they're trying or in the process of doing that. And so while it's not disaggregated there, I can definitely do that in the report. It is a part of the modeling where we try to control for like students. So we do try to control for whether they reported doing something, either trying to get a certification or in process of it, to sort of get at those like students. But I think that would be an interesting way to take that same chart that you talked about and disaggregate that by their reported, you know, K certification or attempted K certification. I'm sorry, career technology.
Yeah.
CTE.
I shouldn't use
It's all right, I know what you're saying.
Okay, but yeah, I definitely take a look at it
Well,
that
I
way.
think that's particularly interesting, considering that we will be opening up the CTE Center, and there will be so many opportunities for certifications and things that can introduce students directly into a good job market.
Mhm.
Hopefully, potentially, they would fund themselves to go on for even higher education, but I would be curious what the effect is of those CTE training, if it ends up resulting in greater secondary application, or kind of the same, but maybe they're able to get more out of our district.
That's an interesting research question. I will think about that.
One of the things that I found really notable was just kind of when you looked at the trends of the same students who had taken the same surveys and sort of some of the trends. It's really difficult in life to understand what you can control and what you can't control. And I think that that is extremely encouraging for the people at our campuses. We've implemented PBIS in the last couple of years. And I think that it really shows that creating that culture in your school is really having an impact on the students who are staying in our district and staying with that school. So I think it's important to recognize that success. And I'm hoping that we continue to see more of that as a trend as we go on. This is maybe not necessarily a question, just more of a concern. The question regarding, and I don't have the exact wording right in front of me, but explaining to the students why what they're learning is important.
Yes.
I find that troubling that we're not at 100%. We want to graduate 100% of students, and we want to create lifelong learners who see value in what we're providing for them. You know, in my 20s, I did some sales, and you can show people features or you can show people benefits. And the features are, look, here's a sunroof. Well, great, what's in it for me, right? Well, the benefit is you can get fresh air. I don't know, I'm really pale, I don't like sunroofs, but bad example. The point is, just because you're fabulously passionate about math doesn't mean that, you know, that translates over to why is that important for the student who's sitting in your class.
Right.
Especially nowadays with kids becoming millionaires on YouTube and making careers out of gaming while other people watch. I think kids can see a lot of different ways, a lot of different paths to success. And I think that it's really increasingly important for us to say, no matter what your path to success is, your knowledge of math will come in handy. Your ability to express yourself effectively in written and spoken word is still really vital. You know, building the value in the education that we're providing. So again, that's not really a question. It's just a statement. And what I'm hoping is that staff and the folks at these campuses can take the information that they have for their particular school and really kind of coach around that, because at the end of the day, we are selling education. We're not presenting it. If nobody's taking it home, then, you know, you can even have an A student who can do really well on a test, but if they're not finding value in that, they're going to forget it tomorrow. So anyway, I really appreciate all this information. I really appreciate what specifically tracking it over time and the very deep specifics that you go into to be able to aggregate and disaggregate and drill down to some important points. I think that's really valuable, and I look forward to how that impacts our approach to accomplishing the things that we set forward in our strategic plan going forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, President Sullins. Yes, I echo the sentiments of my colleague, Mrs. Hudson. Just a lot of information here and very well presented to us. I just had one clarification question, and that was back on page 4, the response rates.
Yep.
The last column, percentage of campuses, more than 80%. Would you explain that column to me? I just don't understand it.
Yeah, it's how many of the campuses at that grade level had more than an 80% response rate. So even though
Okay.
the overall response rate for, I think, 8th grade was 88%, we
Right.
looked and saw that it wasn't all the campuses had an 88, over an 88%. So there was one in particular that had a much lower percentage, I think like 67% response rate, and that kind of dragged down the overall percentage.
Yeah.
But we wanted to capture the kind of that variation in the response rate to show that, there actually were some campuses on there that had like 96% response rates. Were amazing, really amazing. But that's what that's getting at, is
Okay.
how many campuses were over 80% response rate.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay, not that responded at all, but, whatever.
That's right.
And I had the same question about our CTE certification program.
Mhm.
If that wasn't somehow impacting the kids, dropping more students, they're not children, more students not deciding to go on to apply for college. And that will be interesting to watch. I hope you'll work on that area. And I think the greatest news out of all of this is that school staff believes that every student can be a success. That is really wonderful that kids feel that way and have indicated it on this survey. Relevance, yes. I taught for a long time, and that's hard to remember to do sometimes, is to try to give them some relevant reason why they need this, this skill or this information. And I know teachers strive for that, and I encourage them to continue, but that attitude and that heart, the students realize, they know who's real and who's not.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. After this expansive report, it seems so much opportunity to use this information for the district to grow. Dr. Cavazos, could you give us some ideas of the next step on how some of these leading indicators could be used?
Absolutely. So first, thank you for your report and the level of detail and the time you spend on this. This is really, really impressive. And so the next steps on this is they produce campus reports, and then they come back to visit with our principals in one of our principal meetings to disaggregate that, to help them understand it, because if you think this is a lot of information, when you get to the campus level, it's even more, and compared to other campuses and things like that. So they spend some time with our principals, and then the principals then roll this out with their staff as well. And then they have improvement strategies for this data. I think it's important, again, to note that this is one tool, but it's a very important tool because it's thousands of students and their voice. And I really credit the district because this doesn't happen in every district, where you give thousands of students a voice and then you do it to this level and then you correlate it back to their grades and things like that, to all kinds of things. And so by doing that, then we roll out strategies for improvement. And that's what you'll see as next steps.
I had one thing to that too, is that we have a couple of open-ended questions on the survey, and one of them in particular I noticed this year that there were students who say, every year there's students who say, thank you for letting us to basically have a point of input or letting me sort of say what I want to say, good or bad. But this year in particular, some of the students who had the most negative responses, like when you scale them together, had also a really positive response about, I wanted to voice this, I didn't know who to talk to, or I didn't know how to say it. And so it was really interesting to see that pop up a little bit more this year of, here's my chance to sort of say something that I hope matters. And so it's neat to read those comments and sort of see the spirit of it as they care about their school, and they actually hope that it gets better so the next students that come up behind them, hopefully get better than they got.
I agree, and these, it is a rare opportunity, I believe, and I'm really glad that the district is doing this as well, so that the better we know and understand all the people in our system, the better we can serve them. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the next steps. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And with that, we move to the next item on our agenda, which is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Sullins, and I'd like to share some information about our district. We had a very good turnout on our State of the District event, and I want to thank the Arlington Chamber of Commerce for putting this together and organizing it. This was a good opportunity for us to give the community an update on our strategic plan, our bond, and all the things that were happening. But special thanks to the Chamber of Commerce. They do a great job in that. Also, Richard Green Scholars were recognized during the Texas Rangers game last Friday, and Mr. Hill and I were able to join them in their recognition out on the field, and they'll begin their internships this semester. And they're a very, very strong group of students representing each one of our high schools. As you know, last Saturday, many of us were able to participate in the AISD Back to School Kickoff. Over 600 volunteers, which is tremendous, from our community, helped out to hand out and supplies. Over 8,500 backpacks were presented. More than 100 community groups were at the event presenting information. And this is just a clear demonstration of our community and the love that they have for students and getting them ready to go back to school. This week, we know that many of our teachers returned to campus getting ready for the beginning of school year, and they went through training and more training and more training. And then they had their workday and things like that. We had a lot of specialized training in fine arts, security guards, librarians, teachers, all had wonderful training, and I hope they have had a great week, and as we gear up for Monday. We also received our accountability ratings this week, and I want to take a moment to thank all our teachers and our leaders in the building. Our district met standard, and there were improvements, strong improvements across the system, specifically in closing the achievement gap, so that was really good to see, and it's a credit to all our staff across the district. Finally, today we completed our day of service in lieu of convocation so that we could help teachers. And I was at West Elementary moving textbooks. They didn't even give me a chance to look at the camera. I had to just keep walking with the textbooks. So that was okay. It was really enjoyable work at West Elementary. And I want to thank the West Elementary staff. You'll see other staff members that had, it seems like, a little bit more fun, that were able to get out there. Cindy's looking for that penny. That other penny and nickel that we for the district, and Jeremy's doing something with something. But so I want to thank everyone that took their time to go out, and thank the teachers and the campuses for being so supportive of our day of service. And that's Dr. Barlow, I think. Yep, as well. So thank everyone for that, and that concludes my report.
Ms. Mays?
Thank you. Just want to talk about our day of service today for the trustees, my colleagues. What a great opportunity to be able to go into the classrooms and physically do something to help our teachers and just to welcome them back. And the first day before school starts, they're all so excited. Okay, yeah, let me get, okay, there is Jamie Sullins at Knox Elementary helping. There's John Hibbs at Ditto. Looks like he's getting ready to, oh, and there's Keisha at Sharon. There's Polly Walton at Shackelford. There's Kristen at Piercy.
She's got a trophy.
And there's Bowie with baby Ellis is where he was today. So once again, just very thankful for the principals and the staff for allowing us to come into their schools and just be at service of whatever was needed. Really appreciate it. I really enjoy it, and I get a lot out of it. I really do. Also, back to school event that we had, I just want to send shouts out, first of all, to all the different organizations that we partnership with that were there to help our students have a successful opportunity to start off this great school year. If I could just do one shout out to one organization, and that is Dental Health Arlington. They were there. They saw over 400 kids. And out of those 400 kids, 11% of those children needed what they call a number one service, which means they were in pain when they sat in that chair, which means that they had abscessed infections that needed immediate attention. So 11% of those 400 students were able to sit there and get that service on that day. 43% of those students had number 2, which means that they needed assistance, they weren't in pain, but very shortly after school would start, they probably would be. So I just want to send a shout out to Dental Health Arlington, shout out to Glenda Bell, who is over the SMILES program, which, if people don't know, they go into our schools and service students that need dental work. Also give those students information if their parents need work and they're unable to afford dentists, they can come to the clinic and have work done. So just so many different organizations that we partnership with that are doing such an amazing job, and I just wanted to give a little shout out to Dental Health Arlington. Thanks.
Mr. Hibbs?
Thank you, Ms. Sullins. Ms. Mays, only behind the common cold are there more lost school days than for dental issues for our students. So that's an amazing statistic, well ahead of asthma, which is in itself a absolutely amazing statistic. Really quickly, I was able to go to the swearing in of Dr. Diane Patrick today for the TCC board. She is a champion for all things education. She had just wonderful remarks back for our district, and the innovative and leading initiatives that this district has had in conjunction with TCC and UTA and other universities throughout Tarrant County. And it's nice when we're recognized as being a district of innovation as it results or speaks to children being able to reach the next level of education. So that is a real compliment, and she appreciated the support that this board has always given her. Couple of quick items that we have for follow-up. One of the requests that was made by both Ms. Mays and Ms. Walton was surveys to be drilled down to the campus level, and that information be made available to us. And then the other was basically to both Studer and for Gibson, having looking at revision on questions for future surveys. So those were two things that I picked up that we were.
Very good. Thank you very much. I would like just to take a moment to say congratulations to Bowie and Leslie Hogg. Welcome, baby Ellis. What a beautiful family with baby Helen at home as well. We look forward to a new student in 5 years. And so we are so happy for your family. Congratulations. And with that, this evening, it is 9:56, and Ms. Mays would like to speak at 9:56.
Hey, I just want to say, school starts Monday. Every single one of our schools will be opening on Monday, and that includes our newest built school. So please make sure your students are at school on Monday. Please go out to the AISD website and look at some of the new start times, and thank you.
9:57, we're adjourned.